what was it like growing up with Spanish being your first language?
What did I grow up with?
Or what was it like growing up with Spanish being your first language?
Well, we weren't allowed to speak Spanish in school. It was, they didn't want you to think, the other kids to think you were talking about them. And I think it was a good thing because, we were in the United States and that was what we were supposed to be speaking at school.
Did you feel forced to learn English?
Did what?
Did you feel forced to learn English?
Fourth?
Like forced?
Were we forced?
Yeah, to
No.
learn English? No, you weren't forced.
We weren't
It
forced.
just was kind of like,
We were just,
it just was a choice to...
they explained why we shouldn't be speaking Spanish, because other kids would think you were talking about them.
Okay. Was there like a specific reason why you wanted to learn the English language, or was it kind of just like education driven?
We mostly spoke English,
Okay.
and so it was easy,
Yeah.
maybe the first Spaniards were the ones that spoke more Spanish, but as time went on, like in the 50s, English was our first language.
Mm-hmm. How did you learn English?
Just through school, books, and my mom spoke English most of the time. She hardly ever spoke Spanish unless she wanted to tell something in secret.
Do you think people would have treated you differently if you did not learn English?
Would they have what?
Treated you differently if you didn't learn English?
If you were in the United States, it's possible they would have treated you different.
Yeah. Do you enjoy speaking in your first language or your second language?
Well, my first language was English.
It was?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was Spanish.
No.
No?
I didn't speak a lot of Spanish when I was little.
Oh, okay.
It was always English, and that's the way my mom wanted it.
Oh, okay. Have you ever translated for a person who only spoke Spanish or even only spoke English?
I could understand what they were saying in Spanish, and we got along just fine.
Yeah.
Where I could tell them what certain things meant if they didn't know.
Yeah. So how has being around multiple languages influenced the way you see those who are being discriminated against for speaking their own language?
How do I see that?
Yeah.
About the discrimination?
Of speaking their own language, like a discrimination of culture?
Well, if they just are new to the United States and people are trying to force them to, you can't just learn English right away.
Mm-hmm.
It takes time.
Yeah.
And so you can't force them to speak English. But their language, they can use it at home if they need to.
Yeah.
To explain to the grandmothers or mother and father that don't know it.
Yeah. What are your earliest memories of having two languages, being surrounded by
my
these
best
languages?
language?
Or your earliest memories?
That's a hard one. Well, being that I just spoke English mostly, we didn't really use Spanish that much,
Yeah.
So it was easy because my mom pretty much was the one that taught us Spanish, and she knew English fluently,
Yeah.
So we could use both languages if we needed to.
Oh, yeah. And how has being able to use both languages, like, influenced your life?
Throughout my life?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes if you go to a store and they're speaking in Spanish and you know exactly what they're saying, because a lot of people don't even know you're Spanish, because for instance, my sister and my brother had blue eyes. They think Spanish people shouldn't have blue eyes, and but it came from somewhere, and it came from my dad.
Yeah.
Because I found out doing the DNA that I had Italian in me.
Oh.
And so, my dad, I think his family traveled to New York, and there's a lot of Italians in New York. And, I made what's her name? Teresa's friend, Michelle. Her husband is a police, he's not an officer anymore. He just works with certain things. But I said, if I'm mostly Italian, does that mean that the one that did the Brinks robbery would have been related to me? Because his name was Anthony Pino. Isn't that... He laughed his head on.
That's so funny.